This is A Few Good Fights, episode 26. I'm Robert Palin, and that's Sean Taylor. Sean, how's things?
Good. I'm wearing a shirt for the first time today on the podcast. Feels weird.
Wearing a shirt for the first time in your life?
Nah, not in the first time in my life.
Nah.
Special occasions only.
Special occasions.
And we've got Chuck on the podcast.
What a segue. This week on the show, we have Chuck Mindenhall of The Athletic. Yeah. Almost messed up there. Formerly of MMA Fighting. You might know him as the man in the hat. It just broke that Joanna Jedrzejczyk is having some kind of weight issues and she may not be able to fight this weekend, so her fight with Waterson could be off. There could be some changes there. Israel Adesanya had a huge win, of course, last weekend. We're not going to break down the fight too much because I think people are bored of that, but we're going to talk about all things Israel Adesanya with Chuck Mindenhall. And also, Khabib wants to fight Tony Ferguson in Russia. Will it happen? The fight has got to happen. Will it be Russia? Let's talk about it. We're now joined by Chuck Mindenhall, who writes for The Athletic and is one part of the Man and the Myth podcast. Chuck, thanks for coming on, and how's things? How are you?
Good, man.
Sweet.
Glad to be back. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been July, so we can see the Skype back and forth. It's been July. It's been a few months.
Very cool, man. I'm always pleased to come on and talk to you guys, man.
Sure, that's awesome. So we had the rundown done. We had all the news topics, and then something happened today, as kind of happens in MMA these days. Joanna Jedrzejczyk and Waterson is apparently at risk due to Joanna maybe not making weight or potentially not being able to make weight. Now, there's a lot of kind of threads to this story, and we'll get into those. But what was your initial thoughts when you saw that this fight is potentially over due to Joanna not being able to make weight?
I mean, man, it's like it always is, right? Like you see something like that, and you think like, how deep is the card? That's my first reaction: is how deep is the card? Can they salvage it? Like if the fight is scotched altogether, can it still go on? That type of thing. It's not really the greatest card, man. There are some intriguing fights, but nothing that would be main event worthy. So I feel like the UFC is in a bit of a pinch here, man. To either salvage that fight somehow, to figure out a way to make Waterson want to keep that fight at a catch weight, or find somebody last second to stand in. But what a mess, man. And actually, I was just, because there's been so many events these last few weeks, man, and so many things in flux. I was actually kind of I finally got around to looking at this card and looking forward to this fight, kind of thinking about the scope of the stakes and everything like that. So what a bummer, man. What a bummer.
What's your thoughts on it being, so apparently she notified the UFC like a week ago that she wasn't going to make weight. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I did not know that.
Yeah.
That makes me, so my initial reaction is this is pretty much, I mean, it's still the same, like this is Joanna's fault, right? Like she's supposed to be the professional in the situation, but kind of knowing that, I'm a little surprised that we haven't had a change yet, or that they haven't found some kind of resolution. That makes you think that a little bit of this falls to the UFC. If this card ends up being, Cub Swanson and Crow, isn't that the co-main?
Yeah, Kron and Cub.
Yeah, so if that ends up being your main event, I guess that part of that blame falls to the UFC at this point, man, having a little bit of time. But it is a bummer, man, because you cover the sport just like I do, and you want it to be perfect. You want the fights to kind of happen as they are, because it's such a delicate picture. But I hope they figure something out, man. You get like a feeling that the UFC always has something in their back, like up their sleeve, but we've seen a couple times in recent years that that's really not the case. Yeah.
So one of the kind of big, not controversies, but what people are talking about in this one is that Michelle has said that she won't accept a catchweight bout with Joanna. Although she did say recently, it was like in the last few minutes, I think, a report came out that she said that she would potentially accept the fight if Joanna tried to make weight. So she'd accept a catchweight, but she's not accepting it as in let's change the weight. But what's your thoughts on her not accepting a catchweight bout? Do you think that's smart? Do you think, do you sympathize with her?
I mean, we've seen situations in the past where somebody's in a position, and let's face it, man, she's at the cusp, right, of a title shot. I think if she wins, if the fight goes off and she wins, I think she was supposed to be right there, given Tatiana Suarez's kind of uncertainty and everything that's going on. So you don't want to just compromise it. You don't want to just throw caution to the wind here. I hope in some ways this is all a part of a negotiation tactic to get a little more money, you know what I mean, like on the table and everything else, and to save the event. But if I'm her in her camp, and I know how hard it is to get in this situation, and maybe that she will never be in this situation again, I'm not just going to throw caution to the wind and accept a fight against somebody who could be 7 or 8 pounds over, whatever it's going to be. If I'm her, man, you have to look out for number one in this situation.
Yeah, I agree completely. One of the other things as well was that they essentially said that the options are she fights at a catchweight, or they might give her Jessica Andrade in a month. So Michelle Waterson versus Andrade at UFC 244, which is a great fight, but again, it's a very different opponent and with a month's notice. Do you think that's a little bit unfair from the UFC, or are they kind of like is their hand kind of pushed to just do something?
Well, I feel like it's both, but out of all the people probably who shouldn't be punished in this situation, probably Waterson shouldn't be, right? Because she's the one who's the professional who showed up and, supposedly is going to be on weight. I don't know why you would punish her. I don't know, and to strong arm, I don't know if it's a strong arm situation, but to kind of force a whole different opponent with a basically a truncated window in which to train and all that stuff, I don't know. To me, that seems a little bit weird. I'm not sure that I would. I'm not sure if I was her camp, I would be too gung ho for that. But if that happens, man, and she wants to do it, more power to her. It kind of shows her the confidence she has in herself as she does.
One of the other things that I noticed as well is that the UFC, obviously, they were told like a week ago that she might not make weight. But it seems like they're still on board with Joanna attempting to make weight, which I find a little bit egregious, because there has to be something seriously wrong for you to say to the UFC, it's a week, but yeah, I'm not making weight. So do you think it would be a little bit unethical for the UFC to say, well, go and try and let's see what happens?
And it kind of depends, right? Like, What do they mean by try? Because she could go in there and go through the motions, meanwhile be eating what she wants and drinking as much water as she wants, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what they mean. I don't even know how they would gauge that, exactly. But I don't know, man. This whole situation is just it's bad on a lot of levels. But these cards that pop up that are basically not worth salvaging in a weird way, like if it loses its main event like this, you always feel like that part has to fall to the UFC. So you can see why they kind of lose their own moral bearings in a situation like this, and probably want things to work out on whatever level they can. But if they could create a charade basically to make it look as if Joanna's trying to make weight and everybody's happy with that, hey, let's try it.
Yeah. Considering Sean probably won't get this, he hasn't been watching MMA for this long, but considering Greg Jackson is Michelle's coach, I wonder if there'd be a sport killer joke happening by Dana White pretty soon.
No, I thought that immediately too. I was like, here we go again, right? And especially when you hear that Waterson is basically not gung ho to just accept anybody and all this stuff. It really does have that same feel to UFC 151.
Yeah, it's a crazy one.
Smaller stakes, obviously. It's a different fight card, but it has that kind of feel to it.
Yeah. So let's see what happens. But in other news, Khabib Nurmagomedov had some kind of press conference, I believe, like in Russian or something. And he said that he'd like to fight Tony Ferguson in April or March, which I think we're all happy about. But interestingly, he said he wants to fight in Russia. Just initially, what is your chances? What chances do you give that Ferguson versus Khabib actually happens in Russia?
Man, I mean, I wouldn't have probably given it. I wouldn't have probably given his first title, or like a title defense in Abu Dhabi either. So I feel like these days the UFC does kind of operate a little more, like truly a little more globally than they used to. I don't think that Las Vegas is the end all that it used to be for the fight capital and all that. But I still, given the fact, I still feel like if they want the simplest version of getting this fight made, I feel like Vegas is probably going to be the place in the end. And I feel like Nurmagomedov is always going to voice his druthers, and he's also trying to appease his own fan base and things like that. I could see the little bit of that going on. Maybe he's throwing it out there to see if it can happen, that type of thing, maybe trying to get like a groundswell. But ultimately, man, when I think about it, and I'm knocking on wood, I want to see that fight, man. I wanted to see that fight for a long time. I ultimately think it happens in the States, probably. I would guess in Las Vegas, man. It seems to me like a Vegas fight.
Do you think the fact that the UFC aren't as reliant on pay-per-views with this whole ESPN Plus deal, that there's probably more of a chance that it happens now rather than maybe 3 years ago or something?
this has occurred to me, man. Just even watching this past fight card at UFC 243.
Yeah.
And obviously you had two fighters from New Zealand and Australia going at each other in Australia, but the fact that there's no hesitation, I guess, to book a fight overseas, a main like a pay-per-view type thing, it does tell me that maybe Vegas isn't the destinational place for the big fights anymore. Like, it's still, I'm sure, going to be the hub for most big fights, but I feel like they can actually take it anywhere. I'd be interested if Russia actually does happen. I feel like so far the UFC's foray into Russia has seemed very small to me. It doesn't feel like they've really tried to throw a big event there yet. So if that's really the case, and I know it's harder to navigate those waters and to put on a show over there, but if that's the case, man, I would think that would actually have like some kind of special novelty appeal to it, just given that, having Khabib fighting in front of his own countrymen, the partisan crowd and all that stuff, I think that'd be like a real spectacle.
And I know like this question's probably been posed here like 100 times, but what do you think the chances are of the fight actually even happening soon?
Man, it's I sort of hate even talking about it. I feel like you probably feel like you start dancing on eggshells the moment you talk about this fight. But I'm gonna place it, and I don't want to. I'm not gonna jinx it. I'm gonna say 50%. If I say a high percentage, I can guarantee you later today we're gonna read on Twitter that Khabib had his leg amputated or something that.
Yeah. There has to be like no other fight that like just seems like it has to happen. I can't remember any other fight where it's like this is like just needs to happen.
Has to happen. You know what's great about it, man, and you know this as well as I do because I think we've even talked about this fight on this show, but it gets bigger every time they book it.
Yeah.
It's like it's an escalating situation. It feels like a full-blown rivalry that has never been consummated in the cage. So I feel like it's one of those strange situations in this game. And really the big allure to it is actually getting it finally. I think that's the biggest thing, to finally get that. But everything that has happened, all the kind of lead-ups before, it's all matured. And their stars have all risen to like a place that makes it truly compelling, like a mega fight, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I agree. It better happen. UFC 243 went down as well last weekend. I don't want to get too much into the fights because I just listened to your podcast with Sean and you covered a lot of it, so let's not recharge on that. But Israel Adesanya, since the fight, it's been not quite a week yet, but it's been a good few days. What's your thoughts now on him as a star in the UFC? Like, where does he rank? Is he like top 5 star or just top 10, somewhere around there?
I'm one of the rare people who I want to say that, right? I want to say like he's a top 5 or even a top 3 star, like he's transcended the sport and all that. I just haven't seen it yet, to be completely honest. And I feel like he has those elements. If you just piecemeal go through the types of things he brings to the octagon, like he's got a binationality, New Zealand and Nigeria. That actually gives this global feel to him. He's a huge commodity with the UFC in the United States. I feel like the fans here really like him, but I don't know to where he's at exactly in that space. We'll find out in his next fight, I believe. But obviously, he's very good on the microphone before. He's very good after. He's a showman inside the cage. He choreographs a dance coming out. I feel like all of that stuff tells you something about him that's very compelling. It's the great thing about him is he's such an enigma still, I think. That we're peeling back the layers in real time. This guy so far it's just been like this meteoric shot through the UFC. 7 fights in 20 months, and then he has a title. I feel like his speed of star is traveling faster than we're actually adhering to it. Like he should be bigger star probably than he is, if anything. But I do feel that maybe by the time his next fight comes around, we'll see more of the national media. And I mean the media that doesn't generally pay attention jumping in, where the Wright Thompsons are writing a long form on him, and like Esquire's doing it, and every major station is doing stuff. Like when you start seeing that, Good Morning America and all this stuff, like I feel like that's when you feel like they've really transcended the sport. I think what he's done is transcend our imaginations as fans so far, but he hasn't, in terms of just that really wide base of stardom, I'm not sure he's quite there yet.
Yeah. When you were talking about this fight and talking about the whole idea of, you know, his star power and stuff with Sean, and I know it was Luke, and I know it was a lot of other shows brought this up, and I don't want to bring up Conor McGregor because I know you groaned when Sean brought it up that the comparisons with Conor McGregor just always happens, but it's just kind of
comparison you can make.
It is. But one of the things I did notice, and where I see the comparison is kind of like in his business mindset. So I don't know if you've seen his interview. I think it was on ESPN. It was after. And he was talking about how the UFC didn't, you know, give him a great undercard, and how like he pushed for the entrance, and it seemed like he was really worried about like the business side of things, and you know, building up his cards and promoting them. So that's where I see the kind of similarities with Conor, and that's a good thing as well, because it seems like he doesn't just think of what's going on in the cage; he thinks of the wider game as well.
He's always planting seeds, right?
Yeah.
And I think even just by talking in the media about what's going on behind the scenes, he's planting seeds so it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
He's forward thinking in the way that Conor McGregor. I think that there are multiple things he's done in this run, and including when he was kind of, you know, shouting out Paulo Costa, and that whole thing was kind of going on, and he basically says right afterwards, like, he's thinking of the optics. He's thinking of the optics of what the casual fans will see when those two guys are standing there. This kind of gangly looking, string bean looking guy who is him, and then this kind of, you know, beach bodied, you know, good looking Lothario type who's on the other side, who's just huge, you know, and he knows those optics, and he's already projecting like why that's an appeal. And to me, that's what Conor McGregor did masterfully. It was tell you why you're compelled, and be right many times about why you're compelled. I feel like it was always forward thinking. It was always setting, you know, it was always a bigger dangling carrot that kept happening, and he kept it just out of reach. It was always an escalation. So far, Israel Adesanya, maybe this is what the it factor is. We talk about this all the time, but so far that has been the experience with Israel Adesanya, man. He's keeping everybody kind of compelled and adding to his own magnitude through every little interview, every little seed he plants. You know what I mean? Very Conor McGregor-esque in that way.
I agree. I think as well, he's so like connected with this. It's a stupid pun, not even a pun, but he's so connected with the internet, and he's like in that kind of world that he definitely sees that like this is, if he knocks out Paulo Costa, it's that YouTube video of like skinny guy knocks out bodybuilder. You know, like that's what he's looking for. You know,
all the anime stuff as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's crazy, but
and I gotta admit, man, I still get behind that kind of thing. You
100%.
know, like when you see like a very strange looking matchup. Like, I still like that. To me, that's like the weird gonzo appeal of the original UFCs. Like, the optics didn't make sense. It's rare to get it anymore because, obviously, the weight classes kind of eradicate that. But when you can have just natural body types that just look so different, where one guy's power and one guy's kind of preternaturally strong in his own way and has, like, these, you know, this confidence that basically is like a sphinx right now. We can't really get to the bottom of why he is who he is yet. Yeah. I feel like that's an awesome setup.
Yeah.
Stay woke, stay broke.
Yeah. It's got to be Costa next, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, they did a masterful job. They had him seating right there, you know, octagon side at UFC 243. And Costa, man, I love him because he's just so like, you know, whatever, man, whatever. You know, he's just sitting there just loving it. And to me, that dynamic really worked. And the fact that you got the crotch chop, you got all that stuff going on, I just feel like they've already planted the seeds. And I feel like there was already this very nice feeling collectively about what a fun fight that'll be. So it's already in place. I just feel like they just got to capitalize on it.
Yeah. And what about John Jones?
I mean, here's the thing. I don't want to hate on the fact that, because that fight at some point could become like a really big deal, right? I mean, that could be like the fight that we never got with GSP against Anderson Silva, or, you know, Silva against Jones. All these fights that basically were theorized as soon as two guys in different weight classes got big. You know, it's one of those situations that's just too soon, though. Like, because the guy just, let's face it, I mean, Adesanya just won the belt. There are actually natural challenges right there in front of him. Like, and I feel like the UFC would be absurdly like foolish to just compromise everything he just built in one shake, you know, one roll of the dice, and make him vulnerable against the other guy in this league who is 20 pounds bigger or whatever he is on fight night, and unbeatable, really. I mean, so to put him in that situation from Israel's standpoint makes absolutely no sense. But if he's able to like take out a couple of guys and really do it in that McGregor sense, like where it's just very mystical feeling, like there's a lot of, just audacity and just showmanship, and he's literally captivated the fight game in the way that Conor McGregor had after he beat like Eddie Alvarez or something like that. I would be okay with it. I'd be okay with it. I think because as long as you can cast doubt on the outcome, like as long as Israel Adesanya actually looks like a real threat to John Jones, then it becomes viable. But right now, man, he just got it, and you got to let him kind of mature into that space, make some money, put it, get to his full capacity of his ego, fill up the fight game with all this craziness, and then if everybody's still on track, and there's this this natural rivalry from chirping over the course of the next year and a half, put it together. I'd be okay with that then.
Yeah. Like it seemed like to me that it was more of a commentary on not how bad light heavyweight is, but like it doesn't seem to be that many interesting fights for Jones. So it's kind of telling that he was the guy who was really pushing the narrative and was really talking. It wasn't Israel really.
Yeah, and the thing that sucks though, I mean, if we're being real, is like we've been contemplating John Jones moving up for so long because that seems like the natural way to feel doubtful about if he'll win. Like if he's going against Stipe Miocic or Francis Ngannou, you're thinking of, boy, John Jones has never faced anybody like this. That's the whole breadth of the compelling nature of a fight like that is just you don't know at that point. So for him it's anticlimactic right now for John Jones to be picking on skinny little Adesanya because you're just like, dude, you should be going up if anything. If you're looking for challenges, go up. Don't go down. You know what I mean? Or don't pick on guys lower than you at this point. Yeah,
it's not really a good look. Really. Bellator is in the news. Bellator and Ryzen are set to co-promote a December 29th event in Japan. I think this is Bellator's debut in Japan. And it's going to be Fedor versus Rampage. So my question is this anything more than nostalgia?
No, I don't think so. I saw it. I mean, that's exactly what it did, though, right? Like you see that fight and you think like, whoa, man, 2006 or 2007. You're thinking like that's part of you when like when you're into the fights back then, and it was also new. I feel like it kind of kicks that in a little bit, but unfortunately, it kind of dawns on you too at some point. Like, oh yeah, but Rampage, man, is just he doesn't look very good. He's a big old guy now, and we've tried to sing Fedor out of the fight game multiple times, like where it's just you think that he's had it and then he just kind of sticks around. We even went through one of his retirements, so it's like it is based on nostalgia. That's all it is, man. It's still two icons that they're putting together, and some people really can dig that. I guess I can get behind it if I want to just erase a lot of context. Like if you want to just skip back to where you were when you were looking at those two guys as who they were in Pride, or like things like that. Like I can get behind it. The fact that it's happened in Japan on and all that stuff, I'm like, that seems like a homecoming in a weird way. That seems kind of fun. But I'm not expecting a ton from the fight. You know what I mean? Other than like the pangs of nostalgia. Yeah,
that's how I felt. I was looking at it. I was like, oh, this is awesome. It's going to be in Japan. The Saitama Super Arena. It's Rampage. It's Fedor. Well. Yeah, and then I was like, the poster is phenomenal. Cool. And then I was like, but like Fedor almost lost to Maldonado, and he probably should have lost that fight as well. So I was like, I shouldn't be feeling happy about this, really. Yeah, it's bizarre. But they'll make the most of it, But Bellator in Japan, like I think it makes sense for them to go over there and like co-promote with Ryzen. They seem to have a good relationship, and hopefully they build a good card of maybe younger prospects and stuff on there, and build it up. But I like the idea of it.
I've always liked it, man. I always liked the idea of that type of thing, and I like the idea, obviously, of like the New Year's Eve, like the New Year's end card like that. I've always dug that. It feels traditional in MMA a little bit. And the Japanese aspect, it kind of does bring it all back. So I hope it's a big success, man, because for a long time it felt like we were missing stuff when we didn't get that kind of extra stuff outside of the UFC.
Yeah, agreed. Conor McGregor again. Frankie Edgar said that he's heard through multiple channels that Conor McGregor wants to fight him. What's your thoughts on this fight, potentially?
I mean, you go through so many scenarios with Conor McGregor, right? I sometimes think, I'm like, man, when Conor comes back, will it be the big deal that people think it will be at this point? Like, because just what's happened, right? Like over the course of time, there's part of you that's like he hasn't. It's more of a negative feeling towards him as time goes by. The more he stays away, the more it feels a little more negative towards him. Partially because of the stuff he's done, punching guys in the bar and all that stuff. The pending case and all in Ireland and all that. Like, there's so many weird things like that. But it's also just that he flirts a lot, or he has traditionally flirted a lot with people coming back and all this, and he just hasn't. And at some point, you're just like, you tune it out. You start to think like, until you sign on something, I don't know. But when I thought about that, man, and I was in Vegas when Frankie Edgar had beat, I think, was it Chad Mendes, right? And,
I was there as well.
He was supposed to get that fight with Conor. Yeah. And the next day, Conor wins, and then it's off to lightweight he goes. And it was like one of those things like the two ships passed right by each other for 24 hours. Frankie thought he had it, and then he didn't. So there's a part of me that feels like it's a just fight. Like I see it as something that was unresolved from back then that still makes sense now. It's weird timing because you got Frank Edgar who's like whittling himself down physically to be able to fight, I guess. He's conscious finally of his weight, trying to fight as a bantamweight. Yeah. And you get a guy who's basically, I think, a lightweight at this point. So it doesn't make all the sense in the world on where they're at, but I know Frankie would fight a guy right now at heavyweight if you gave him, you know what I mean? Like, so I love Frankie's attitude that way, and I think he'd still be, he's smart enough from all of his years of cutting weight and stuff. I think he'd be smart enough to be prepared physically, to be in that fight. I'd be okay with it. I really would. I just, at this point, man, I would like to see Conor come back because there's a lot of I just want to see if he there's a lot of things I want to see if he still has. There's a lot of things he can still repair. I feel like there's a lot of question marks as to how big he will translate. I just want to be able to see all that again. He's been away long enough. I'm like, I want to see him back. And if it's Frankie Edgar, I think that'd be a big fight. So I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, like we were talking before this, and Sean actually said to me, like, if Conor doesn't fight again, how would you feel? And I said I'd feel pretty content with it because I think his best days are gone. But there is a side to it where I agree with you that I do want to see what happens if he comes back. Like, what kind of reaction does he get? What do people think? Even more so than, like, how does he look in the fight? Just, like, what actually happens? Do people travel over? Do you get the same kind of thing? I think that's very interesting.
Yes. And I don't know. It just seems like you're in Ireland, right? Yeah. So it's like, it seems like even Ireland is not behind him like they once were. So I feel like all of that stuff becomes his evolved intrigue. I feel like now when he comes back, it's like, what do you have? And can he reinvent it? Is it even possible to reinvent what he had? I don't know. I want to be able to see it though. Yeah,
like Sean, you were a kind of a newer fan when Conor started. So like, from your perspective, you would feel you kind of grew up in MMA with him, so you probably feel like a bit weird about the whole thing.
Yeah, look, if he never fought again, I actually would be okay with it. There's definitely some interesting fights there for him. I'm just not sure
how he'd look.
Yeah, I don't think he looks great if he comes back, to be honest. I'm not sure who he beats right now. Yeah, probably beats Frankie. Just because of the size, I think helps. But
makes some sense of why he might be calling him out too.
Yeah, like, I think so.
If he's calling him out, but if he is, I'm like, he might look at Frankie as like, well, that's a big enough name where I could actually beat him. You know what I mean? So we'll see.
Yeah, I think the Gaethje fight is a fun one. That's one I'd like to see.
Yeah, it's a crazy matchup.
Yeah.
Francis Ngannou is frustrated that he hasn't had a fight in a while and he wants a fight for December. Anthony Johnson, Rumble, said that he'd like to fight Ngannou. I'm not sure if it's on his comeback, but he wants to fight him anyway. But thoughts on Francis Ngannou standing here? Do you think that the Stipe DC fight happens? And if so, where would you put Ngannou and all that?
Oh man, I mean, I feel like if that trilogy happens between Miocic and Cormier, which it sounds like it is, right? So I feel like Ngannou at that point should probably keep going. I think he should keep going. I think the UFC would prefer he keeps going. And honestly, man, when Anthony Johnson came back, I have to admit that, or when I heard he was coming back, that was the first thought that crossed my mind. Was like, what if you put those two guys in the cage together? Because it just seems like it's rare that you get. It's almost like the bigger version of Costa versus Romero, right? Like we have these just but it's just that much bigger. It's just that much easier. It's that much more absurd and extreme. So I'm like, I kind of want them to make that fight, man. And I feel like the fans want to see that fight. I feel like I'm not alone. I feel like the sentiment has been that way. And I get happy thinking about it. I just think that if they put that fight together, and it's billed basically as a number one contender fight, like if they can kind of assure that that's the case, it has a big enough stake range, to make it very compelling. So that's the fight I'd like to see, man. If Ngannou somehow doesn't get the next title fight.
Yeah, and it's weird as well with like both guys. It's like I listen to a lot of guys, breaking down fights. Like Luke Thomas, your friend, is very good at breaking down fights. But then it comes to like guys like Ngannou and Rumble, who like they have this weird knockout power, and I haven't really heard anybody explain how it works. Like it's like they punch very hard, but it just seems like they put guys out, and it's an unusual thing to see.
All I remember is Ngannou, like at the Performance Institute, when he was first coming up, and he was in there and he punched that bag and it gauged your power.
Yeah,
and it was like double like what the other guys were doing. You know what I mean? It was like his punching power was so off the charts that it was like doing that ding 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 ding. That guy, and if you've seen him in person and shaking his hand and stuff, it's like a loaf, man. It's like he's such a big guy. Everything is just loaded into his upper body, his legs. So I feel like whatever he hits, he destroys, as they said in Rocky IV, right? Like he's one of those guys who can crack the mountain face. So is Rumble, and I feel like that's what makes that fun. Yeah,
and Rumble was recently at 276 pounds or something like that.
Something's insane.
Yeah, something crazy.
A full 100 pounds beyond his welterweight capacity from back in the day.
Insane. But I think that's a great place to leave it. Thanks for your time, Chuck. And I know you're going to record The Man in the Myth, so I look forward to that later today, I think. Or for people, it was yesterday. So go check out The Athletic. We're subscribers. Yep. Excellent stuff. And look forward to more stuff from you, Chuck. Cheers.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thanks so much, fellas. Appreciate it.
All the best. UFC on ESPN Plus 19. Joanna versus Waterson goes down this weekend, but we're not quite sure if it's actually going to be that main event because it is Wednesday right now, and there's some reports that Joanna's not going to make weight, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen with the main event. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down the main event quickly enough, just in case it actually happens, because there's some reports that maybe it will happen. But, we don't want to go too deep into it, so we'll focus more on the rest of the card and just give a kind of a quick breakdown on our thoughts on the potential main event. So it's Joanna Jedrzejczyk against Michelle Waterson. If this fight does happen, it looks like Joanna is going to have some kind of bad weight cut trying to make weight, or they're going to do some kind of catch weight where Michelle will probably be at some kind of disadvantage. So I guess, what's your thoughts on, not the situation because we spoke about that earlier on, but what's your thoughts on the fight itself?
On the fight itself, I think it's a great fight. I was delighted when it was announced. I think it's a really good one, and I think Michelle Waterson has been on the cusp of a big fight like this for quite a while now. She's had a couple of good wins.
3 in a row, is it?
Yeah, like 3 in a row. Arguably could have got the last title shot, but obviously went to Zhang. They're going to China. So yeah, I mean, if she wins this one, if it goes ahead, I mean, she's undoubtedly the number one contender.
Yeah, I think that goes either side. Yeah, this one
definitely.
Yeah.
Joanna coming back down is interesting. We've seen a lot of guys jump up, jump back down. It's interesting what it can do to your body. The weight cut was never easy for her. We've seen some bad videos of her before.
Yeah, she always looks very skeletal.
I think this one's quite clever though, as in if she has told the UFC she can't make weight
a week out.
Yeah, she's basically telling them that she's not going to bother her arse cutting weight. So she comes in quite healthy, having had fuck all of a weight cut.
Yeah. And
then has a sizable size advantage.
So I wonder why Waterson doesn't really want to take that fight.
I can't blame her at all.
Yeah, I can't blame her. I think it is a really good fight. It's a title fight either way for the winner.
Yeah.
Styles are interesting because Joanna is more of a puncher. She is a kickboxer, but she's more of a puncher. Whereas Waterson uses her kicks for the most part. She doesn't throw an awful lot of strikes with her hands. So it'd be interesting to see how the fight would play out in that sense, because Joanna's usually good at closing the distance, but she actually has a reach advantage on Waterson. But when you're throwing kicks into the equation, that doesn't really matter at times. As I said, don't go too far into this just in case it doesn't happen, but I would have fancied Joanna going in. The weight cut thing changes things. But I would have fancied Joanna going in because I think Waterson still is a natural atomweight, which is another reason why it'd be crazy for her to take a catchweight bout with Joanna, who's huge for the weight class. So, I'd pick, if the fight happens, I'd pick Joanna, even with the weight cut issues.
See, I don't think the weight cut thing is an issue.
It doesn't seem to be.
Because she basically said, I'm not going to bother cutting weight, give me a catchweight.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of cheating, really. Yeah. It's like saying...
She was very critical of people not making weight as well before. which is funny.
It's kind of cheating. As in, I looked at the odds for this, and generally when I see people with a bad weight cut, I like to back against them. But like lately, I've come around to thinking, even with a bad weight cut, you're coming in with a big size advantage. And Joanna, as it stands right now, is 1-5. I mean,
1-5.
Yeah, it's hard to back against that if she's not going to bother her arse cutting weight.
Yeah. Fair enough.
And Michelle is 3-1. So unless Joanna is made to cut weight, which I find it hard to believe a commission will make her do, because they'll have her medicals and they'll know what she should be at to make weight safely, etc.
Yeah.
I think Michelle is well within her rights to say no.
I agree.
To the catch weight.
Yeah.
But yeah, if the fight goes ahead, Joanna.
Okay. Great stuff. There's also a potential replacement as Angela Hill.
Yeah.
If the Angela Hill fight happens against Joanna and there's no weight cut for Joanna, I'd pick Joanna as well. So you're probably the same.
Say that again?
If Angela Hill does come in and fight, because there's actually talk of Angela Hill fighting either Joanna or fighting
because
Waterson.
if Michelle turns in the catch weight.
Yeah. So I'd pick Joanna as well.
And what if Michelle faces Angela?
Michelle, maybe. It's a tough one.
Yeah,
that's
a tough one.
Yeah. Too many fights. Cub Swanson versus Gracie may be the main event, but it's currently at the co-main event spot. Yeah. This is very, very interesting. Cub Swanson has lost 4 on the trot, I believe, against all good guys, but he's clearly coming to the end of his run, and he hasn't looked like the old Cub Swanson in a while. I thought his last performance was okay, but now you have Kron Gracie coming up, who is 5-0 at the moment, but he's an absolutely amazing submission artist, so he has that in his back pocket at all times. What is your thoughts on this fight?
I think Cub's one of those perennially tough guys, isn't he?
Yeah.
We were talking about this card earlier in the week. We were actually just going through it. It's quite a deep card.
Yeah.
A lot of good fights on it. I think Cub's a very good marker fight for Kron Gracie to see where he's at, what level he's at, and how he deals with him. Yeah,
I agree. One thing I do like about what Kron Gracie has done up until now is that he has fought guys with experience. Now, this would clearly be the best guy that he's fought. Kawajiri is probably the other good guy that he's fought. And Bruce Leroy is good. But this would be the best guy and the most experienced, aside from Kawajiri. But I do like that he's had some guys who have experience. So it's not like he's jumping into the deep end against a guy and he's only fought scrubs, I do like that. Yeah,
I like the fight. I think it's actually quite... considering Cub has lost his last 4 in the trot, 5-4 isn't great on Cub, I don't think. I mean, if you rate Kron as a prospect, 4-7 is quite decent.
That's quite decent, yeah.
I like Kron.
Yeah, it's a tough one because we don't know where he's at, really. As you said, this is a good kind of marker to see where he's at. But Cub Swanson, it's tough to pick Cub Swanson right now on that bad run.
Yeah, it is.
Coming to the end of his career, it seems. Like, he was basically cut by the UFC not too long ago.
Yeah.
And Kron Gracie is on a good run. So I'll go with Kron. I think Cub Swanson struggles with really good grapplers, even though he's a black belt himself. But he's been choked many times, and Kron loves to choke people, as we saw against Bruce Leroy.
You only have to look at his name to know he likes to choke people.
Yes, Gracie, So yeah, I'm going to go with Kron Gracie, and that's a nice price as well.
Yeah, it is quite nice.
I do like that. It's good. Let me get the card. So the next fight is Thomas Gifford against Mike Davis. 2 prospects. I think Mike Davis is probably seen as the bigger prospect, with Gifford, he's kind of been around the block a little bit, but he's a good all-rounder. What's your thoughts on this one?
Which one of these guys is the late replacement there?
I don't know.
Brock Weaver was supposed to be in this fight.
Oh yeah, Brock Weaver without to see. So Brock Weaver withdrew against Thomas Gifford, so it's actually Mike who's coming in on short notice.
Okay. I don't have odds on this one.
Change.
Yeah. I hate trying to make predictions on short notice fights.
Yeah.
It's always tough for both guys.
Yeah, it is. It's always tough for both guys, and I like Davis. Like, in the past, he's looked good. Lost his UFC debut to Gilbert Burns. There's no shame in that. And Gifford lost his UFC debut against another debutant, I believe, against Roosevelt Roberts. So guys who haven't had the best UFC career so far. But Davis, I don't know. I think he's more dynamic. I'm going to go with Davis just because he's more dynamic. Short notice, I think on either side it's fine. Yeah. If it goes down the stretch, Gifford is more of a well-rounded decision type guy. So if it gets past 2.5 rounds, I'll be all over Gifford. But I'll go with Davis.
I'll take Gifford just because he's been preparing for a fight.
Yeah.
I assume Davis has been in camp and stuff, but I'll take Gifford.
Yeah, it's probably a good pick, to be fair. Mackenzie Dern returns after becoming a mother, I think for the first time, against Amanda Ribas. I think this is a good fight for Mackenzie Dern.
Yeah.
You know, if she, I assume she's going to make weight, we hope. But she has struggled with that before. But she, you know, at the end of the day, she's an excellent grappler. I think she's a way better grappler than Ribas. She has power in her hands. She's not the best striker in the world, but you know she has that power, so she kind of has that X factor standing there. So yeah, I just think it's going to hit the floor, and Mackenzie Dern is on another level than most girls in this division.
Yeah. Personally, don't know a whole pile about Ribas.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see. I'm just interested to see in general how fighters look coming back after giving birth.
Yeah.
It has to have some sort of effect, and I
Definitely,
know
yeah.
obviously the psychological effects are
Yeah.
phenomenal. As in, we've seen guys coming back as dads, and
Yeah.
it totally remotivates them.
Yeah.
I wonder what the biological effects on their body are and dealing with damage and stuff.
Yeah. I'd like to see some data on it.
Yeah.
Like I know it has happened, and there has been a few fighters who came back after becoming mothers and they didn't look great.
Yeah.
But you know, there could be way more instances where they did, so
Yeah.
it's hard to say.
All being right, I think Mackenzie wins this fight. Mackenzie Dern. She is 4-6 and Ribas is 11-10. So yeah, I'll take Mackenzie.
Great stuff.
Doing up a little bet here on the side as well.
Lovely.
We'll get to
lovely.
that at the end.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Luis Pena, the violent Bob Ross, one of my favourite nicknames in all of MMA,
Phenomenal.
fights Matt Frivola, and to be honest, I think this is one of the better fights on the card. I'm a big fan of both guys. I think when Luis Pena lost against Mike Trezano, I think he learned a lot, because he was going in there and he was just smoking everybody, and then he went in, didn't look right in that fight, and I think he's learned since then. He's even had a decision since then, which I thought he looked good in that fight. Matt Frivola, really, really tough guy. Just beat Jalen Turner, who's alright, but you know he's been in the UFC now for a couple of fights. So I think this is probably the potential fight of the night contender, like early fight of the night contender for me.
Yeah, I think we're going to see Luis Pena learn a lot, and we're going to see how he's evolved since the loss. I do kind of like seeing young guys get a loss earlier in their career. You can learn a lot from it, rather than say smoking everyone and getting a title shot too early.
Yeah.
I think a loss can ground you.
I agree.
I think that might be the case with Pena. He's 8-15 and Frivola is 11-8. I'll take Pena.
Yeah.
I agree though, it could be a cracker of a fight.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really fun. And of course, Frivola had that draw against Lando Venata, which is, Lando Venata, very inconsistent, but a good name to be there. I'm going to go with Pena as well. The opener for the main card right now, this could change because there's a prelim there that probably should be on the main card. But Eric Anders fights Gerald Meerschaert. Two guys who I don't like picking because anytime I pick them, they let me down. So it's kind of a coin flip. I think Eric Anders was a guy who I think more people were high on when he was kind of on a bit of a run, and then ran into some guys and looked pretty terrible. I'm gonna go with Gerald, but I'd like to say draw, but draws just don't really happen that much in MMA. But yeah, I'm gonna say Gerald, but yeah, whatever.
Yeah, Gerald at the price. Gerald would interest me as well. Eric Anders is 1-2, and Gerald is 6-4. At the price, I'd probably take Gerald as well, just because I don't think Eric is someone you want to be relying on at 1-2.
Yeah. No, either would I. He's fought some good guys like Lyoto Machida. He's lost to Thiago Santos, Elias Teodoro, not a great loss, split decision, and Khalil Roundtree. But yeah, that was the opener to the main card. Is there anything that tickled your fancy on the undercard, Sean, or the prelims?
Yeah, there's quite a few actually.
There actually is. There's probably more on that than there is in the main card.
There's quite a few. Nico Price and James Vick is a good fight.
That was a fucking great fight. Yeah, I like Nico Price.
Yeah, Nico Price is 4-7. James Vick is 5-4. There's quite a few you like as well.
I have one?
Yeah, cool.
I'm gonna say Tim Elliott and Davidson Figueiredo. That is a fucking phenomenal fight.
Yeah.
Tim Elliott is always in fun fights, and Figueiredo, really good fighter as well.
Who do you like?
Figueiredo, but he was kind of figured out from what I remember. Let me just double check on Tapology. If it was his last fight. Taking a minute to load. Formiga. So it wasn't his last fight. He beat Pantoja, but yeah, he was kind of figured out against Formiga. But again, Formiga is a great fighter as well. So I like that fight.
So I have
a bet, is it?
A big filthy one for everyone.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Take Sean out of context on that one.
Cron Grace. Yeah, no context, Taylor. Have you seen that no context down account Twitter? It's brilliant.
Go on, then.
Yeah. Oh, go on then. Cron Gracie, Mackenzie Down, Lewis Pena, Gerald Mishkrat,
Okay.
Nico Price, and Davison
Figueiredo.
Figueiredo.
Whoops.
20 to 1.
That's all
Or
right.
just over 20 to 1.
That's
So
all right.
a 5-0 will give you just under €115. So happy Christmas, folks.
That's great stuff. I like it.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Probably not going to back it though.
I will.
Okay.
No, I won't.
I'll probably
Can't.
forget. Like,
Yeah.
there's your winner for the week.
But yeah,
folks.
let us know if you back that and you win.
Here's a pint.
Well done. Yeah, it buys a point. Great stuff. Let's move on to educating young Sean and talk about probably a more, I don't know, historic fight than these. So this is educating young Sean, and this is the part of the show where we give Sean a fight. He goes off and he reviews it by watching it, and then he comes back, tells us what he thinks, and then we give him another fight. So last week I gave you a very historic fight. It was, you're laughing, I don't know what you're laughing at, but it was Anderson Silva versus Rich Franklin, number 1. And it was, of course, where Anderson Silva was crowned as the champ. And he's over there smirking to himself, and I'm not sure why.
We've both had a mare here, Rob.
We gave you this one, didn't we? Yes, we did.
Because I only...
Were you watching it and then we're like,
No.
I know this from somewhere?
So I generally watch these on a Tuesday or the night before we record.
Okay.
So they're fresh in my head. And I clicked in on Fight Pass.
All right.
And similar to how YouTube does, it continued playing from the last time I had ended watching. And I was like, oh, fuck.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so I watched it again. And
So I forget your review. Tell us your review now.
the fight ending sequence is fucking phenomenal. The clinch work is amazing. And it's phenomenal looking back, thinking that was only his second fight in the UFC.
Yeah.
The hype behind it was massive.
Mm-hmm.
The hype behind him was massive. And it's hard to think now who could actually come into the UFC and fight for a title in their second fight. Maybe in a women's fight where the divisions are a bit thinner, but in the male divisions, I don't know.
Yeah, it'd have to be like a Ben Askren situation.
Yeah.
Like he came in with a lot of hype recently, and if he won against Jorge Masvidal, you'd probably see him competing for a title. Obviously, he didn't, and that would have been fight number 3. But yeah, you're right. That doesn't really happen these days, so it's quite rare. But it was crazy back then because nobody had seen that type of striking in the UFC. Like obviously, Anderson was doing his thing outside, and I'm not sure if you've seen it. He was in cage rage and he'd done this up elbow, so he knocked somebody out with one of these, literally, boop, and knocked somebody out. He was phenomenal back in his day. Phenomenal. Yeah. Do you see any comparison with him and Adesanya?
I seen this discussion somewhere during the week.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. I think Israel is very much an evolution of Silva. Yeah. As in he is himself. He's his own man, and he hasn't copied Anderson as such.
Yeah, he fights very differently. But like I think with the I don't know, the style of it all. Like you know,
there is a lot of similarities. I mean, they're both phenomenal strikers and very creative with their striking. But yeah, there is a lot of similarities. But Israel is definitely his own man.
Yeah. So I don't know what you gave this last week. Oh, not last week. Last time we gave it to you. So
I don't know.
Give it a score. It's out of 5, isn't it? 5. I always ask this. 5 championship rounds. Give it a score, and then I'll scour back, and hopefully next week I'll be able to tell you if you were on the same.
I'm going to give it a 3.
A 3 out of 5. I suppose it was dominant. It wasn't it wasn't your type of fight.
Yeah, it was a good fight and it was a phenomenal performance, but I love a dog fight.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know that. Speaking of dog fights, you came to me, I think it was today or yesterday. And you said, give me a kickboxing bout because, you want to watch some kickboxing as well. And I know in the comments for last week, thank you to whoever this was, there was some suggestions.
King, I think his name is, was it?
Yeah, I think you're right. There was some suggestions. We're not going to go with yours this week, and there was 1 or 2 there that we already gave to Sean, the ones that I remembered. But I'll give you a kickboxing one this week, and then maybe I'll use the one that he suggested next week. So it's a little bit close to home. It's Mark Hunt in kickboxing. It's the K1 World Grand Prix from 2001.
Okay.
It was a semi-final bout, or was it in the semi-finals of the tournament? And it was against Ray Sefo, who is a coach now in MMA, so you might have seen him around the cage. And this is fun.
Good stuff.
This is your type of fight.
Great stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Let's go and move on, and let's finish up with Sean's weird news.
So we've seen the guys at City Kickboxing talk a lot about the team mentality there.
Yeah. They seem like a great bunch of lads.
Yeah, a great bunch of lads.
Yeah.
Father Ted reference there for anyone. And the gym's Instagram account put this up, and this was of Dan Hooker and the rest of the team celebrating Israel's title victory.
Live.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
Let's do it live.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see. Dan follows him with the celebration. The three-peat, baby.
That is hilarious. I love it.
It is pretty cool to see in an individual sport.
It is, yeah. I just love the celebration because, like, I know it was what Israel done, but I don't know. Just something about him in the back, like doing the machine gun thing.
To me, that means they were at that in the gym.
Oh,
They
100%.
were 100%
Yeah,
flat.
exactly. Yeah. I wonder if he'd done it before Israel.
Oh.
That'd be fun. That was great, though. Love it.
Some more Israel. So we spoke about this last week. And I put a quote to you from Israel where he said that when he's having fun, he's at his best. So the quote is there. And I said how Israel was talking about how he had stuff going on in the camp for the Kelvin fight. And that's what he felt. Although he did feel he had to go to that like dark place to grow. Yeah. He said he wasn't enjoying life as much at that point. Yeah. Which is pretty scary to see how that fight went and how good he did look. Yeah. And then you see the next fight and like, oh. Yeah,
it was a different guy, wasn't it? Yeah, even in demeanour it was like, and he was allowed to do his like crazy walkout, which probably helped him, which is weird. Like for anybody else doing something like that and putting yourself out there like that is probably like the worst thing you could do before a fight. But for him, like that probably helped him, which is crazy to think.
You do get the sense that he's only doing something that he's already played out in his head.
Yeah.
So it's all just he spoke about it before. It's all deja vu to him.
Yeah, exactly. It does feel that way. Fucked up. He said it was his first title defense, didn't he? Yeah. I know he was interim champ. He was like, there's no interim on that. But yeah, phenomenal performance. Yeah.
Next up, we have some jiu-jitsu defense for everyone out there.
Oh, lovely. I need to learn some more.
How to get out of a rear naked choke.
Oh, so I guess he's going to start with hand fighting, is he? No? Oh, okay.
Still audio in the background, but doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Oh yes,
brilliant,
lovely,
great defense.
So if you're listening on audio, rear naked choke was in. No hand fighting, didn't need it because he had a lighter in his back pocket. Just lit it up.
Just gonna get rid of this because it's annoying me a little.
Yeah, no problem.
But yeah, great defense.
Great, yeah, exactly, yeah. You know,
so the moral of that story is always carry a lighter.
Yeah, they don't check for lighters.
Yeah. Our friend Tom Ranson put this up during the week. The World Athletics Champions was on during the week. And Darren Till doing the javelin. Yeah. Great walk down.
Well done. You might as well do something in your off time, you know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah, does look like him.
It's a spit of a minute.
Yeah. Scroll down because I seen his post as well. And then someone replied, I think. Am I right? Look at that guy. He looks like Till as well, doesn't he?
United, yeah.
He does look like it. Is he a good player, is he?
Nah, he's alright.
He's alright. Looks like Till though.
United are a bit shite.
Yeah, they are shite. Did I just remind you of how bad United were there?
I don't want to talk about it. This is an MMA podcast, Rob.
Yeah, let's move on.
Yep. This is my favourite one of this week. So we've both seen this already.
Yeah, I think most people have seen this, but
and it's sick.
Yeah. Treat yourself again.
Give some audio on that, Rob.
As I said, to hide from the commission. I mean, get a load of this. Check this out. Look at this, baby boys.
Oh my god. That's so grim.
You know what I'm saying?
Fucking sick.
Saying? That's why I used to wear fucking sunglasses, baby boy.
Baby boy.
Holy shit.
Oh. There we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the special Halloween episode of Believe
God.
You Me.
Michael Bisping is a fucking savage.
Gangster.
Savage. Like he
I used to see the comments people used to say all the time, and I used to feel like a total dickhead at the time as well, and I wasn't doing it because I thought I was a superstar. I was doing it to stop people looking at my
I always wondered that because like he doesn't seem like the type. He seems like the type if you walked into somewhere with sunglasses on, like indoors, he would, you know, he'd hate you for it. So I did always wonder that. Now I knew he had a bogey eye, but Jesus Christ, that's grim.
Yeah, like
savage though.
Doing the eye tests with that glass eye, he must have been like, Q.
yeah.
Just punting on it.
It shows you like commission oversight isn't very thorough.
Yeah, people talk about fighting through pain and fighting through like adversity. That's next level. Fighting with one eye, literally one eye.
Yeah.
Gangster.
Do you know what was gangster as well? This episode.
Oh.
Thanks for coming, Sean.
No
thanks for showing up.
Yeah.
And thanks to Chuck Mindenhall for his time. That was phenomenal. Always love having Chuck on. One of my favourite writers, if not my favourite writer.
Man
Not
in the
just
hat.
saying that, the man in the hat. Go check his stuff out on The Athletic.
Yeah.
We're both subscribers.
Yeah, very good.
Very good. They have some podcasts there as well.
Yeah.
They also, I don't think it's not MMA related. They have another podcast that just started. Not sure exactly the name of it. Looks intriguing. I'll tell you what it is later.
They cover all sports. Like I follow them
Yeah,
for
yeah.
their the business of sport, which I find really good, and then soccer and other sports. Boxing
Yeah.
as well is quite good. Mike Coppinger does the boxing. He's very good.
Yeah, you're always talking about that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, they have some good writers. Go check it out. It's cheap enough. It's not that expensive.
fine.
Yeah, it's fine. And yeah, thanks for listening. Potentially a Jorge Masvidal video coming soon, similar to the Diaz one. Not the same topic, but similar to the Diaz one, style wise. So currently in production. So look forward to that. We'll be here next week as usual. Same bat time. Same bat YouTube channel.